In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
Stigmata Studios presents The Jinn Jihad. The Jinn Jihad kicks your face with myths, mysteries, epic battles, suicide bombers, quirky characters, and divine power armor. In this epic graphic novel, the warrior archangels descend on a city in chaos. It's all-out war. The non-standard assembly battles an ancient terrorist organization, and their ultimate weapon, a corrected, magically enhanced, unstoppable monster, the Jinn. This graphic novel is a wild ride. It's one part distant Arab myth, one part Old Testament angelic vengeance, and one part unique heroic tough guys. Available on Amazon. Get more info on the Jinn Jihad and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
The bridal chamber and the sacred texts, sacred sex. Unlike mainstream Christianity or Judaism, Gnosticism tended to take extreme positions on human sexuality. Many Gnostics were ascetics and rejected all sexual contacts. Others, such as the notorious Carpocrates, preached freedom through excess. Judging from their writings, some Gnostics attempted to make sexual union sacramental, possibly seeing it as a way of raising the individual's spiritual powers, although many Gnostics advocated chastity in order to halt the further imprisonment of divinity. Others apparently saw sexual activity as one road to ecstasy and the soul's true knowledge of its condition. At the same time, many Gnostics and subsequent dualists like Manichaeans and Albigensians attempted to stop further creation by not conceiving children, and in some cases not eating meat, or even in the most radical instances, harvesting crops by their own hand. They saw sexual desire leading to procreation as one of the demiurge's subtlest traps. Nevertheless, sex and cosmology overlapped in some Gnostics' notion, even as the concepts of spirit, light, and seed were related, as pointed out by the historian of religion, Augustine of Hippo, we'll just call him. However, would identify semen as the physical medium for the transmission of original sin. Only Christ, he argued, was born without sexual intercourse. Hence the original sin or lustful feelings. In addition, sexual offerings apparently could be made of the archons or aeons, the guardians of the different heavens interposed between this earth and the heaven of the true God, who barred the passage of inferior souls. Epiphanes, a disapproving Catholic bishop, cites several instances of Gnostic leaders who taught the practice of making sexual offerings, claiming that sexual intercourse could become, for example, an offering to Barbalos, a divine being described in some Gnostic texts as the mother of Yabal-Boeth, the demiurge. You guys have heard me referred to Yabble with before. Barbalos was sometimes seen as female and equated with Sophia. In other instances, Barbalos was male, the first emanation from the Godhead and the perfect spirit. Writing in the 370s, Epiphanius described how male and female Gnostic Christians would perform special ritual after sexual intercourse. At one point, he writes that they would hold up their blasphemy to heaven, the woman and the man taking the secretions from the male into their own hands, gazing reverently upwards, and they would pray, "We offer this gift, the body of Christ." Then Epiphanius continued, "They consume it, partaking of their shamefulness, and they say, 'This is the body of Christ, and this is the patch for which our bodies suffer and are forced to confess the passion of Christ.' They do the same with what is of the woman when she has the flow of blood, collecting the monthly blood of impurity from her, and they take it and consume it together in the same way, and they say, is the blood of Christ." Such libertine Gnostics, he wrote in his anti-heretical Encyclopedia, Paranon, would pray naked at other times, believing that the power and the semen and the menstrual blood was soul, which they would consume and collect after both intercourse and male masturbation. One intriguing but sketchy Gnostic rite recorded in several sources is that of the bridal chamber. Underlying the bridal chamber ritual may have been the idea that the limitations of gender had to be overcome before the Gnostic Christian could rise to its highest heaven of true God. And enigmatic Gospel of Philip may hold the key to the actions of Marcus, or the Gnostic sexual rituals described by Epiphanius. Many of these texts recovered at Nag Hammadi are fiercely aesthetic. For example, the Testimony of Truth, a denunciation of both Catholic Christians and other less radical Gnostics, suggests that no one who has married and yielded to fleshly passion can ever rise to the light. Philip, however, appears to describe a 5-stage Gnostic initiation. According to the translator Wesley Eisenberg, the stages appear to be baptism by total immersion, an anointing with oil, the sacrament of bread and wine, the ransom or redemption, and the bridal chamber. The last term may also cover the entire initiation, Eisenberg suggests. Like most of the Nag Hammadi books, the Gospel of Philip was written in Coptic, in the language of Egypt, before the Muslim conquest, but Eisenberg believes the original text was composed in Greek, and yada yada yada.
The Abracast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
Welcome to the Abracast. I'm John Towers. I'm your home skillet. John Towers, we're going to be pointing out real quick that the format of the show is changing. The show changes all the time. Usually it's not so noticeable. Sometimes it is. The format has changed before and it probably won't stop. I mean, you got to adapt it, right, bro? So what we're doing is we're going to make the shows... I don't know. The main thing we're going to do, you're going to notice, is we're clearing some of the commercial breaks. So the way that I usually go is I usually build breaks in my outline so I can like catch my breath, like reset what I'm doing, get a drink, lube up a little bit. But I'm feeling that the way that the reads are currently placed in the show, I believe, spends a lot of time breaking stuff up, where it maybe shouldn't. So you'll see. Give me a show or two to master all this, but so that's what's going on. So the ads still going to be in somehow, and then there's going to be like something at the very end that you might want to hold on to, or at least fast forward to the end or whatever. So you guys will catch up real quick. That cold open was from the entry. We're going to be talking about Gnosticism for a while. So that cold open was from the Encyclopedia of Heresies and Heretics from Chaz Clifford by Barnes and Noble books. Yeah, so that was from the Gnostic entry in that. So I got a lot. I'm surrounded by books. I got more books than I have desk space available. So you guys might hear me rifling around a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna get right into it. But I already forgot how to. Okay, no, I'm just gonna drive through. I'm gonna drive on, bro. I'm gonna drive on. So, a great way to support the show would be rate and review on iTunes. Check me out at Stigmata Studios. Before we get rolling, let me just get this stuff done. StigmataStudios.com. You go to the comic book link. You can pick up a bunch of comic books. Go to the podcast link. You can listen to a bunch of podcasts. There's a series of links on the upper left-hand corner. And that'll take you to all my social media. So I encourage you guys to find me on social media, and I super encourage everybody to support the show on iTunes. I'm currently trying to expand listenership, and that helps. The rate and review on iTunes is a big deal. So there we go. Yeah, so that's it. That's what we're going to talk about. So before we get started here, I just want to tell everybody I'm actually drinking Jack and Diet Pepsi, but it is in a mason jar. It's a fucking gigantic one. It's a Molotov fucking cocktail. If you have a bottle of whiskey, there's two things you can turn into a weapon. Oh no, how did I write it? Fuck. You can make two weapons out of a bottle of whiskey. You can make a Molotov cocktail and me. So if you guys are drinking with me tonight, pour it up, put it in your mason jar. If you're at work or at the gym and you're not drinking with me tonight, I'm sorry. You could do it in your mind's eye. All right, so we're going to be talking about Gnosticism and the Gnostics. This is something I've talked about on the show before, but it's never been a show topic. Shows that you might want to check out are the Albigensian Crusade episode. I don't know. It was pretty early. That's all about the Cathar Crusades, when the Catholics were waged war. The Crusaders waged war in Europe, in France, destroying, killing these Gnostics and these Jews. So you might want to go back and listen to that. And then really everything that we've talked about lately, you can tie into this in one way or another. And I think that we're going to shed a little bit of light on that. You know, if we're talking about Enoch, or we're talking about antediluvian patriarchs, or you're talking about, Masonry, I guess, you're going to start seeing a lot of lines being drawn back and forth. So, we're going to get right into Gnosticism. We're actually going to do like a little history piece too, right after. So if you guys don't like to listen to the commercials, just skip ahead a little bit, and we'll get right into this. But if you would like to, and I would like you to, check out some of these sweet ass comic books I got here. Books of comics. All right, so not much was known about the Gnostics. And what was known about them up until a certain point, up until 46, I think, what was known about them was what the Catholic Church had said about them. Their heresies. You know, the Catholics looked at them and they're like, look at these weirdo wizards. They don't, whatever. When you talk about the Cathar, you talk about the Cathar Crusade or the Albigensians, you know, a lot of people liken them to, like, they're the universe's first hippies. Like, they paint this picture of them as, like, these free love types that were, like, tripping out, man. But, you know, in some ways, when you get into, like, their theology or their cosmology, they're fucking heavy metal. Like, they not only do they believe in God, and they believe in God literally, they literally believe that God is out to get them, and that he's a motherfucker. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. So I thought we would open with that, and I've been carrying around this Catholic dictionary with me for like 30 years, and I thought it was interesting because this was printed in 41. So what it has here to say about Gnosticism is basically what we had to go on until the Nag Hammadi text was found. So, and I'm going to get into the history of that and everything, but it's real short because no one knew shit. You know, I'm going to read this and it's just going to be like heretics. You know, they were jerks and they probably worshipped, you know, Satan or something. So, here's the entry for Catholicism, the Dictionary of Catholicism, published in 1941. Gnosticism. The generic name for a group of heretical systems which flourished in the first 3 centuries of the Christian era, and which had one common element of teaching, that salvation is by knowledge. Now, do you listen to that? I'm just going to say it again. Salvation is by knowledge. So you think about these Catholics, and their dogma and their doctrine is what? Their salvation isn't by knowledge. It's not about self-knowledge. It's not about the knowledge of the world. It's about their salvation lies in faith. They got to believe stuff. Where these Gnostics is actually where the word Gnosticism comes from. It's Greek for knowledge, Gnosis. This is where agnosticism. I'm agnostic. That's where that comes from. That means I don't know what I think, or I don't know what I know, or I don't know. Atheist, atheist is that's if you don't know what you know. Agnostic is I don't know. I'm knowledge free. So you could see all of a sudden, like right away, where this is going to be a problem for these wily Catholics. Salvation is by knowledge, in the possession of the few. They were of pre-Christian order, and they had come into contact with the religions of Egypt and India as well as Judaism. They indulged in magic. They assimilated much Christian phraseology and corrupted many Christian dogmas. All matter was a corruption of the divine. Christ was an aeon an intermediary of God with matter. And existence was an evil to be escaped by knowledge. And then they go to list some Greek dudes who were prominent Gnostics. Irenaeus was one of the most conspicuous antagonists. So we could see right here the Catholics, and this is the problem, the main problem that Christians had with Gnosticism. Because think about it. Think about the business model of a Catholic. The church has to get offerings or whatever. They have to get their tithings, which we talked about in the Melchizedek episode. So they're competing. They need these rich noble people to come in and to give them money, so they can buy their funny robes and their fish hats and their and all this, And then so they're okay, well, they have nobles who are well, I don't know, let's check out what these Gnostics have to say. These Gnostics are they don't have to build churches. They can preach anywhere. They don't have to collect tithings because they don't have to build churches. They don't have to have funny fish hats. They don't have to wear robes. Nothing has to be gilded in gold. They're just they're just there. And to take this one step farther, they don't even really have a priesthood. In some Gnostic communities, they actually rotated their priestly duties. So one day, Fran, from my next door neighbor Fran, would be the priest, and then the next day Tom from across the street was the priest, and then the third week it's oh, it's my turn, I gotta be the priest. But they didn't have a priest because they didn't have a set priest. They didn't have a priest class. They didn't have the profession of a priest because their salvation was personal, because it was within your knowledge. Your experience leads to your salvation. So they didn't have confessionals. They didn't have any of that bullshit. So you can see already, if you're being intellectually honest with yourself, and you're, kind of waiving your spiritual beliefs, or if you're a Christian or whatever, you can see that one seems a little bit more user-friendly than the Catholic Church. The calisthenics up and down, the crossing, with the magic water, and all this. So I'm going to read a part of, this is from Louis Spence's Encyclopedia of Occultism. This was printed pretty recently, so this is after the discovery of Nag Hammadi. So we'll talk about this Nag Hammadi thing briefly after this. Under the designation Gnostic, several widely differing sects were included in the term, derived from the Greek meaning to know. In opposition to mere theory and sharing with the significance with the word wizard or witch, which will also indicate that their original meaning, those who know. Simultaneously with Christianity, these sects assumed a definitive form in the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, being their sphere of operation at first. Their doctrines were a mixture of Indian, Egyptian, Babylonian, and Christian creeds, astrology and magic, and much of the Jewish Kabbalah also. We're going to get into Kabbalah, don't worry. From Alexandria, in the center of the mystic learning, much of their distinctive beliefs and ritual were derived. While it seems certain that to a certain extent they became affiliated with Mithraism, to those sheltering kindness, the Occidental Christianity also owed much. Much of these sects had practiced magic arts, astrology, incantations, exorcisms, and the fashioning of charms, talismans, and amulets, of which many are extant at the present day. So we're just going to skip ahead here. In Persia, they were also put to death. Oh, wait, hold on. But some embraced Islamism and transmitted their doctrines to a dervish sect of Manichaeism. And later sect was founded by Manes, who belonged to the order of the Magi and was famous for his skill in astrology, medicines, and magic. The sect was an anathema to the church and its later variants: Paulicans, Cathar, Albigensians, Lollards, and still the Carboni never failed to arouse persecuting fervor of the church. Apollonia of Tyre, a pagan who was supposed to have some connection with the Gnostics, and the first Gnostic eminence was Simon Magus, contemporary with the Christian apostles. The Simonians are said to have interpreted the creation in Genesis as the symbolic gestation of the fetus. The temptation of Eve in the Garden of Eden having a like character. The Carpocratians, one of the Gnostic sects, derived from their mysteries and rites from Isis worship. They used theurgic incantations, symbols, and signs. The Ophiites, who adopted Egyptian rites, and as their name indicates, would include much of a serpent symbolism. So the The Gnostic talismans were mostly engraved gems. Okay, yada yada. We need to find something with Hermes here. Gnostic legend and Greek characters continuously within the circle was written the nature of the thing which he desired to prevent. The operation was called the Ring of Hermes. All right, so that's that. So okay, so my point being is that pre-40... What was it? Let me see here. Okay, pre-45, the only thing that anyone knew about the Gnostics is basically what the church had said, that they were heretics. There's some leanings that they might be dualistic or they might be magic users. So that all changed in it didn't really change in 1945 because it took them years to sort of translate these texts. But in 45 or 46, some guy found what's called the Nag Hammadi library or the Nag Hammadi text. So I'm going to jump to this book by Marvin Myers called The Gnostic Discoveries, The Impact of the Nag Hammadi Library. And he does a pretty good job of encapsulating the story. He actually tells this, he gets into like this blood vengeance, this blood feud this guy's family had with another family. They're running around the desert murdering each other, which is fascinating, but it's beside the point for our talk here this evening. So hold on. The guy's name, the guy's name is Muhammad Ali, but we're not talking about the Muhammad Ali. We're talking about a guy. His actual name is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was. Every time I say it, I just think like, "Ooh, I'm pretty. I'm so pretty. I float like a butterfly." You know what I'm saying. Muhammad Ali was riding his camel with his brothers Khalifa Ali and Abu al-Magid and others to the cliff on the edge of the Red Land. The Felinahin hobbled their camels at the front of the Jabal el Tarif and began to dig around a large boulder on the talus, or slope of debris they had formed against the cliff face. They were gathering sabaka, which is a natural fertilizer that accumulates in such places. But to their surprise, they discovered a large storage jar buried by the boulder, with a bowl sealed on the mouth of the jar as a lid. Although it was the youngest brother, Abu al-Magid, who initially uncovered the jar, Muhammad Ali was the oldest of the brothers, took over operation. And in his account, Muhammad Ali has suggested that he paused before removing the lid. This guy is a dude after my own heart, man. He paused before removing the lid or breaking open the jar, since he was worried that the jar might contain a jinn or spirit that could cause grief if released from the jar. You can buy my book, The Jinn Jihad, on Amazon right now. Muhammad Ali apparently also reflected upon stories of treasures hidden in the ground in that area of Egypt, and his love of gold overcame his fear of jinn. He smashed the jar with his mattock. That means pickaxe, by the way. Remember, they went out there to dig for some kind of fertilizer, so they have their implements with them. And indeed, something golden flew out of the jar and disappeared into the air. But when he peered into the broken jar to see what remained, he was disappointed, finding nothing but old codices or books. The golden material that Muhammad Ali saw, we may conclude from his story, was not gold at all, but most likely fragments of papyrus, golden in color, that was released into the air from the jar and glistened like particles of gold in the sunlight. Muhammad Ali proceeded to take from the jar the codices that remained, 13 codices of the Nag Hammadi library. The one intact tractate from Codex 13, 3 forms from thought, was stuffed inside the front cover of the Codex 6. He tore up some of the codices in an offer to share them with his other Felahin, but they declined his offer, and so he removed the turban he was wearing and wrapped up the codices in order to carry the old books home to Al-Qasar. James Robinson has observed that some of the damage done to the Nag Hammadi codices must have occurred when Muhammad Ali ripped them apart that day. More damage was done when, upon reaching his home in Al-Qasar, Muhammad Ali threw the codices unceremoniously into the courtyard reserved for the animals, while later the mother of Muhammad Ali took some of the dry papyrus leaves and the codices and used them along with straw to light a fire. In the cave oven, in the clay oven used by the family, Robinson surmised that the papyrus leaves that had come from what we now call the Nag Hammadi Codex 12, since that codex is very fragmentary. With only a few leaves remaining, on that day, Gnosis and wisdom of one sort or another went up in smoke and ash, lost forever. As for the rest of the Nag Hammadi codices, the family of Muhammad Ali tried to sell the books for a few piastres each, and some were traded for cigarettes and pieces of fruit. The antiquities dealer Pykion J. Tano got involved in the dealings, and the last of the codices were delivered to the Coptic Museum in Old Cairo, where they remain to present day. So there we get the idea. We get the idea. This poor guy is running around looking for fertilizer, crashes into this secret of Gnosticism. So he busts into these tracks. So I'm going to just take a quick break here. And not a break. I'm going to take a quick second here to explain. So when the Bible was assembled, it was assembled late. Like, they had this thing called the what was it? I know everyone out there is screaming at me right now what it is. I can't remember. So they had this like conclave, or they had this meeting where all the churches kind of got together, and they were like, okay, well, let's build this Bible. It was the Ray Kroc it was the Ray Kroc meeting of the early church, and they were like, what books should we get in this Bible? And because at that time, like, every sect and every like spin-off or splinter, it was the Council of Nicaea. That's what it was called, the Council of Nicaea. So they would every like splinter or sect or whatever would write their own shit, explaining their like doctrine or their like proclivities or whatever. So the church got together and they're like, okay, we're going to include this one, we're going to include this one. They all need to kind of have the same story. So a lot of times these, like when you hear about the Book of Enoch being removed from the Bible, like I don't think the Book of Enoch was ever actually in the Bible. They just neglected to include it. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of books like the Book of Enoch, which is just a little too weird to be in the Bible, even though a lot of weird stuff does happen in the Bible. But that book is just like a little too weird. And actually, like when you look at it, you're like, what's Revelations doing in there? Like that's a crazy fucking book of the Bible. No one knows what the fuck it's talking about. But that's it. This is the early Hollywood. They needed the big Michael Bay fucking ending for the book. They're like, shit, what are we going to do with this book? It can't have, it can't end on a down note. So, the Michael Bay of priests walk in and they're like, I got it. There's this lunatic on Patmos that wrote this fucking crazy book. And that's what book we're going to close on. So a lot of these books suffered from the same thing. Not like they were ever going to be included, but that, because they're like writing, so like one Gnostic sect over here, and there's a Gnostic sect over here, and these guys thought that fucking was okay, but these guys were like, you should never fuck because it's crazy, you should never have kids, and these guys over here are like, you should never eat meat. So they would all write their own gospels backing up their own stories. So you can imagine like the volume of material that just no one knows about. Even to this day, probably like the Gnostic or the Nag Hammadi library probably only has a fraction of these things. I'm sure there's information out there on that kind of stuff, projections, trends, and that kind of stuff. But what we have is great. What the Nag Hammadi library provided is great, and we are going to get into that. I'm going to switch books here. We're actually going to move into one of my favorite books by a guy, Stephan Holler, who's like this Hungarian dude. You remember when I did the Terror of the Ancient Sky episode, and I was telling you about Wall Thornhill? I think it is Wall Thornhill, the Project Thunderbolts dude. How it's like he just sounds like everybody's granddad that you could like fall asleep to. And I mentioned Joseph Campbell is also the same kind of way. Stephan Holler is also the same kind of way. He's just this old like Hungarian Gnostic, and it's just like, oh, I would like to go to sleep. Listen to him babble on about Gnosticism. But he wrote this book called Gnosticism: A New Light on the Ancient Tradition of Inner Knowing. And it's a great book. Here, Stephan Holler, Holler, Hoeller, PhD, is the Director of Studies of Gnostic Society of Los Angeles and the author of Gnostic Jung and the Lost Gospels. At one point in time, you could find a bunch of, I guess you could call them podcasts, a bunch of recorded lectures of him talking about Gnosticism. They're all fascinating. If you are interested in this topic more than like what what we're going to be talking about here, if you want to do a deep dive, you can find those, and that's a great place to start. They're probably on YouTube. I don't know. I found them on some Gnostic library on the internet. Years and years and years, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. But we're going to jump to this book, Gnosticism and the New Light on the Ancient Tradition of Inner Knowing. All right. Oh, God. It's bothering me. Hold on for 1 second. How fast can I do this without being an asshole? The Council of Nicaea. The first Council of Nicaea was the first ecumenical council convened by the Emperor Constantine with the sanction of Pope Sylvester I, consisting of over 300 bishops, mostly Eastern, under the presidency of Hosius of Cordova, and 2 Roman priests, legates of the Holy See. And principal work was a blah, 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 blah. Yep. Okay, so it was the Council of Nicaea. I'm trying to find a date. It was 320. Why doesn't... This is the Catholic Bible, or the Catholic Dictionary. It's not giving me a date. I believe it was like 320 something. Now I'm going to have to do this. Do this. Council of Nicaea. 325. Urgh. So, okay. So just put that in perspective for 1 second. It's a bunch of Christians, the followers of Jesus Christ. So Jesus, the calendar for some reason starts at 0 or 1, I should say, when Jesus was born. So he was 33 when he died. So the year 33 is when Jesus died. The year 60-something, 62, was like the fall of Jerusalem. So these guys waited around for, we'll just say, 290-something years before they got together and they got their shit together. So these Council of Nicaeas, so between all the Christians, these are like the Catholic, what would become the Catholic Christians. These guys all sat around and they were like, well, I believe that Jesus was a man and not divine. And then across the table would be someone who was like, no, fuck that. You don't know what you're talking about. Jesus was divine. He was the Son of God. Like, they didn't even have that basic shit hammered out. 300 or 290 years into this fucking thing. They were like, whoa. Also, there was a question about, there's some parts of the Bible, the New Testament Bible, that people think that there were or coded or whatever messages or teachings about reincarnation. So that's another thing they did, is they went through and they ripped out all this reincarnation stuff. The Gnostic, if you believe in reincarnation, I have a home for you. Gnosticism has that. Gnosticism, it's in there. So we're going to get into this this Gnostic worldview here in a second. Oh, Lord. We're already 43 minutes into this thing. Chapter 2, the Gnostic Worldview. Let me see. Do I want to just start this off from the jump? I'm going to skip this part. Okay. God and the cosmos. Most religious and philosophical systems recognize in one form or another that the world is imperfect. It's an imperfect place. Where they differ is what they suggest should be done about it. In many traditions, humanity is made out to be the villain. Mainstream Judeo-Christian thought, for instance, holds the transgression of the first human pair precipitated a fall, not only of the human race, but of all creation. The flaws and evils of earthly life are considered to be consequences of this fall. Some extreme environmentalists espouse a position that seems like a later-day secular translation of the doctrine of the fall. Human beings are seen as despoilers, the original sinners who perennially destroy the natural paradise. Gnostics have a perhaps unique and startling view of these matters. They hold that the whole world is flawed because it was created in a flawed manner. Gnosticism begins with a recognition of earthly life is filled with suffering and impermanence. Life is hard and then you die. Oh, Dr. Holler is being nice. Life's a cunt and then you die is an adage that Gnostics agree with. Although they might modify and thus offset the first part. All forms of life consume other forms to nourish themselves, thereby visiting pain, fear, and death upon one another. The truth pertains even to herbivorous animals who live by destroying the life of plants. In addition, so-called natural catastrophes, earthquakes, floods, fires, droughts, volcanic eruptions, plagues bring suffering and death in their wake. The more complex an organism is, the keener is the sense of suffering and distress. To face these alarming facts squarely is not easy. Most human beings have a strong psychological need to perceive life as in some sense benign and potentially happy. Gnostics and Buddhists have often labeled pessimists and world haters because of their willingness to look in the dark face of the world in the eye. Yet both of these traditions affirm that there is a way out of suffering and ignorance, and that way involves essential salvific change in consciousness. So he's saying Gnostics and Buddhists have often been labeled pessimists. Gnostics also get labeled as anti-Semites sometimes because, like I mentioned, their heavy metal view of the world is that God is evil. So when you think about when you think about the hardcoreness of God, the God of the Bible, he basically has two phases. In the Old Testament, he's rock and roll God. He's blinding people. He's fucking raining fire down on them. He's fighting giant sea creatures. He's destroying races of giants. Like he does a lot of heavy metal stuff in the Old Testament, which is basically the Torah. So when Gnostics are like, this God, the God that created everything, which is Yabal Boath or the Demiurge, is really a giant cocksucker. So that's taken to mean that Gnostics are anti-Semites. What I think is that we're working on two different paradigms here. Oh, the second phase of the God of the Bible is like, Everything's cool. I'll just forgive you. Like, it's great. Just ask for forgiveness, bro. If you just ask me for forgiveness, I'll just forgive you. It's schizophrenic. It's definitely two different fucking entities, right? Back to the book. Or maybe you got laid there in the middle somewhere. As long as a person will not raise his or her consciousness beyond the physical world to a higher spiritual reality, the soul's enslavement in darkness, whether darkness is the outer physical world or the world of the mind, continues. It is as though the body and the mind were bars of a cage in which the soul or spirit is trapped. When the captive entity exists in a cage and exits the cage and flies aloft, it rises to spiritual realms where ultimate meaning and happiness abide. Soaring through these regions, it finally reaches its primordial home, the divine. That reminds me, years and years ago, I did a watercolor series. I actually had it in a gallery in town for a month. I got to show for a month. And one of the paintings I painted was this like jail prison yard. And this guy with chains on him was like wrestling like a glowing like spirit form. It's totally like I'm just beating you over the head with this metaphor of this prisoner struggling against the material world or whatever. But it's funny what art makes you think, right? Because I'm sitting there and I'm like just hanging back, listening to people talk about my work as they're going through. And a female is like, "Oh, I think I understand. He's wrestling with a demon. He's wrestling with his inner demons." I mean, I guess so. It's insightful. It's a little surface level for me, but it's actually totally backwards. It's your inner angel wrestling with your outer demon. Maybe I'll find a picture of that and put it up on my Instagram this week. Describing Gnostics as pessimists is valid only if one maintains that the physical and the personal psychological realms are the only realities. Regrettably, this view underlies much contemporary secular thought in our culture. In contrast to this view, Gnostics assign a high value to self-liberating and potential of transcendental consciousness. The reader may be this is great. The reader may be familiar with Plato's renowned analogy of the cave. Prisoners held in the cave, being unable to see outside, mistake shadows on the wall of the cave to be reality. The light that is the source of the shadows, however, is the true reality. Gnostics hold that humans have the potential to turn away from the shadow on the wall and permanently and commune with reality directly. This is the basis of an important point. The created world, including a major portion of the human mind, is seen as evil by the Gnostics, primarily because it distracts consciousness away from knowledge of the divine. Physicality inevitably attracts one of the external, while the turbulence of the personal mind focuses attention on itself. Although this double distraction of inner self is forgotten, yet it is the inner self that is the point of transcendence. Transcendence. Transcendence within the human field of experience, for it alone has a direct link with ultimate divinity. Through the experience of through the experience of transcendence, what Gnostics regard as the true original sin, namely alienation and separation of the human from the divine, can be undone. To state that Gnosticism is anti-cosmic or that Gnostics are world haters is a gross oversimplification. What the Gnostic struggles against is not so much the cosmos as the alienation of consciousness from the ultimate reality underlying the cosmos, which in monotheistic language is called God. Since to the soul without Gnosis, the cosmos appears to be the only reality. It is the obstacle of the Gnostic's true objective, which is the raising of consciousness above all physical and mental substitute realities to the true reality beyond matter and mind. Whoa. The ancient Gnostics lived in a largely monotheistic milieu. The Jews and Christians and even the pagan Hermeticists believed in a singular God. Monotheists envisioned God as a creator and usually also as a sustainer, lawgiver, and law enforcer of the universe. Since the Gnostics, rather reasonably it seems, could not believe that an erring pair of human ancestors could have brought about the immemorable evils and unpleasantries of the world, they were left only with one culprit, the Creator, God himself. The world did not fall, the Gnostic says, rather it was imperfect from the start. The proposition that the world was created by an imperfect deity in its own flawed image makes more sense when one understands the Gnostic concept of God, which is more subtle than most. The God of the Gnostics is the ultimate reality beyond, and in a sense, quite alien. The created universe, like the Kabbalists and most esotericists in the world over, the Gnostics substitute the idea of emanation of the divine in place of the idea of creation. The transcendent God does not create. The divine essence emanates. He comes forth from the unmanifested state into the manifest, making possible further, more specific creations. The original God remains the first cause, while the other entities become subordinate or secondary causes of creation. To use a homely analogy, a financier or landowner may decide to develop a large piece of land. Most likely this person will not be directly involved in clearing and preparing the land or in planning, constructing the buildings. Architects, engineers, construction workers, and others will do this work. As it's unreasonable to think the world might have been created in a similar manner. The Gnostics have always held the view, to elaborate on the analogy, the landowner becomes less and less involved in the development as the chief architect is inept and his workers slovenly. Then, in spite of good intentions of the owners, the final result will be anything but perfect. The architect was known in ancient Gnosticism as the demiurge, from the Greek demiurgos, which means half-maker. since he made only the form but not the inner life of the world. The workmen and further managers were called archons, using the Greek word for petty rulers. It goes without saying that the majority of the deeds and words of Old Testament God, according with the character of the demiurge, Gnosticism's disdain for Yahweh must be ascribed precisely to this circumstance. All right, this seems like a great place to stop and collaborate and listen. I'd like you guys to support the show. Please support the show by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. It's a great way for me to help grow the audience, which I desperately want to do. Hear my words and hear them well. Another great way to support the show is just go to stigmatastudios.com, click the comics link, pick up some books. You're going to need something to read at the beach this summer. When you go camping, you're going to need some comic books, some graphic novels to read. I got you covered, bro. I got you covered. You want to read some heretical shit? You want to read some bullets, booze, blood, and blasphemy? I got you. So I'm going to play some ads here. I'm going to drop some ads in, and then at the end, we're going to start doing a cold close on the show. We do a close open, and we're going to do a cold close. We're going to do a hot close. Maybe that's what it's called. I don't know. We're going to talk a little bit more about the bridal chamber and the sacred sex of the Gnostics during the hot close here. If you want to hang in towards the end of the, if you want to hold on after these ads to hear more about this sacred sex business, that's what you're gonna have to do, or fast forward it, or whatever you want to do, whatever, bro. So I'm John. Thank you guys for listening. I just want to say I love you all, and I hope you guys just stick around for this sacred sex business here at the end. And I hope you guys listen to these great commercials and maybe pick up a fucking book or two and maybe rate and review me while you're at it.
Stigmata Studios presents The Scorpion Strikes. In this comic book, a terrorist called the Scorpion is transported to a secret CIA prison. He quickly turns the tables on the guards and administrators and releases the prisoners. A well-armed anarchist called Constituent Zero assembles a team and fights to take the prison back. This story is a dark political action thriller. The Scorpion's actions set the stage perfectly for the Jin Jihad. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com. Stigmata Studios presents The Test of the Scorpion. In this comic book, while the Jin Jihad is raging on one side of the city, the terrorist called the Scorpion sets a secondary attack in motion as he obtains a small tactical nuclear bomb. A mysterious, ever-living warrior called Cyrus the Dead Guy steps forward to test the faith of the Scorpion and his lunatic followers. This is an action-adventure story. It's a bit of swashbuckler that wraps up the Jihad stories. Available on Indie Planet. Get more info on The Scorpion Strikes, the Jin Jihad, The Test of the Scorpion, and other titles at stigmatastudios.com.
Like if you pass out with the CD still on, when it's over, it like will skip through like 120 tracks or whatever, and then there'll be like a weird like warbling sound or something at the end, and you're like, I found the hidden track. There was a hidden track. But yeah, 90s bands used to do that shit all the time. Hidden tracks. That's what this is all about now, my friends. This is the hidden track episode. So we're going to talk a little bit about. I just want to mark we're an hour and 5 minutes into this. I'm wondering how long this is going to wind up being, this hidden track. So what we're talking about, or what this hidden track thing is going to be about, is this Gnostic ritual, the bridal chamber and sacred sex. I did the cold open was about this, so we're just going to pick it up. Several possible interpretations of the bridal chamber suggest themselves, particularly as the author of the Gospel of Philip uses marriage and sexual intercourse as spiritual metaphors in various places. One interpretation is that some type of ritualized sexual intercourse was performed, which symbolized the union of the soul with God, or the union of God with his primary emanation, as variously as seen variously as Sophia or the Perona, the Holy Spirit. This would certainly fall within the Western tradition, and indeed some later medieval Kabbalists would describe a parallel between marital intercourse with the union of God the Father with the Shekinah, or the glory of God, and the feminine aspect of divinity. Often described as being in exile after Adam and Eve's expulsion from Eden. In addition, Irenaeus's, I think I'm getting better at it, Irenaeus's description of Marcus' sexual rights, if we may take it at face value and suggest at least some Gnostics performed a type of sacramental sexual rite, but lacking the testimony of Gnostic insiders themselves, the interpretation as applied by the Gospel of Philip remains conjectural. Okay, so I'm going to actually weigh in right here. I didn't plan to do this because I haven't. It's obvious, right, that I haven't prepared for this episode at all. So I'm actually going to stop this for a second because it reminds me of something that I talked about in an earlier episode. I did an episode back in the day called it was about alchemy. It was what did I call it? The Magnum Opus. It was called the Magnum Opus. It was early, but for the reads, what I did is when I first started getting into doing the readings, the reads that I did were Tool songs, because I was trying to show the hermetic or the alchemical, or I believe the Gnostic characteristics of these Tool songs. You know, Tool is a modern. It's not heavy metal. I don't think it's like some kind of prog rock, esoteric kind of whatever. I'm sure you know what fucking Tool. I'm sure you know what it is. So, I guess this is my casual. I put my smoking jacket on. And we're just gonna hang out and talk after the ads play. So, okay, so also on the show before, I've mentioned that in my comic books, the idea that human beings were four-eyed, two-mouthed, hermaphroditic sort of beings, and when Yabble-Boath or Jehovah or whatever separated them to create these things, the whole idea of alchemy talked a lot about this. God, alchemy, Baphomet, the Baphomet episodes, we get into this. Any time we talk about Crowley, it gets into this. It's the uniting of the opposites. It's the male and the female coming together. It's the microcosm, the macrocosm coming together. It's the matter. All the Masonry episodes deal with this. It's the matter and the spiritual coming together. So I want you to think about that when I'm talking about this sacred sexual thing. Hold on, wait a minute. Yeah. Oh, what fucking song is it? Okay, here we go. Man, I got a burp that's just trying to get out of me. It's my fucking soul trying to escape. Okay, here we go. I found it. I shouldn't even have hyped it up. That was nothing. All right, so it's this Tool song called Zombie, and it's silly because it has to do with Pee-wee's a character in Pee-wee's Playhouse, but when you it's named after a character in Pee-wee's Playhouse, but knowing what we just talked about, the Gnosticism and all that stuff, and then like I just brought up like Crowley and the combining and convergence of these opposites, and we're talking about Baphomet, we're talking about Coagula and Solve, and we're talking about the white moon and the black moon, we're talking about all this stuff. I'm just gonna read these lyrics real quick. I gotta get into my reading voice. Hold on, actually I gotta find my goddamn flame. It's fucking cold in here. All right. I think I might be getting a little too casual. Zombie by Tool. Remember the context of all this. Okay. Here from a king's mountain view, here's from a wild dream come true. Feast like a sultan I do on treasures of flesh, never few. But I would wish it all away if I thought I'd lose you just one day. The devil and his had me down. In love with the dark side I'd found, dabbling all the way down, up to my neck soon to drown. But you changed that all for me, lifted me up and turned me round. So I would wish this all away. Prayed like a martyr, dusk till dawn. I begged like a hooker all night long. Tempted the devil with my song, and I got what I wanted all along. But I would, if I could, I would wish it all away. Wish it all away. Wish it all away. I wanna wish it all away. No prize I could hold sway or justify my giving away my center. All right, so here we go. We're going to get into it. I think. I hope. My fucking fingers crossed. If I could, I'd wish it all away. I thought tomorrow would take you away. You, my peace of mind, my all, my center. I'm just trying to hold on for one more day. Dim my eyes. Dim my eyes, dim my eyes, if they should compromise the fulcrum. I want and needs divide me. Okay, so here we go. Finally. If wants and needs divide me, then I might as well be gone. Shine on forever, shine on, benevolent sun. Shine down. I'm not musically inclined. I'm pretty good at a lot of things. Music is not one of them. Shine on, okay. Shine on forever, shine on, benevolent sun. Shine down upon the broken. Shine until the two become one. Shine on forever. Shine on, benevolent sun. Shine down upon the severed. Shine until the two become one. Divided, withering away. Divided, withering away. Shine down upon the many and light our way, benevolent sun. Now, here is all that. I drug you kicking and screaming through all of that shit in the middle of our sacred sex thing here, talk or whatever, to get to this. So they're talking about these sacred sexual rituals, and I'm talking about when human beings were male and female combined, like some kind of like Gnostic, like divine, like hermaphrodite that got separated, in your whole life you're just wandering around putting your dick into chicks trying to find your other half. All you want to do is find your other half. All you want to do is find your other half, and we're going back to this Tool song. This is the outro, and it's super understated when you listen to the song. Like he's talking to you, but he's already talking about being divided. He's already talking about shine down the light, the beams of enlightenment shining down until two become one, and then we get into this. So think about this. Think about fucking. Think about you're in this sacred sex ritual, and you're saying, breathe in union, breathe in union, breathe in union. So as one survive another day and season. Silence Legion. Save your poison, silence Legion, stay out of my way. So all the last three things doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means something, but nothing to this talk. I was paying attention to the breathe in union part. It's so important, like, you get these guys virtue signaling. I see it on social media all the time where they're like, it's very important for me, to make sure that my partner comes before that I do. It comes before I do. And you're like, really? But here, they're talking about breathing in union, repairing that breach, the sun coming down, shining until the two become one again. So, I'm sorry for that walk down that shit. The other obvious interpretation is that numerous references to sexual intercourse are metaphorical. Because no one can actually mean that you're fucking when you're talking or you're rapping about fucking. How weird would that be? I'm empty. We got to wrap this up pretty soon. In support of this view, we find a passage advocating the customary Gnostic view that not all people are capable of Gnosis. If the Gnostic initiate is a sensible fellow, he understands that discipleship is all about the bodily forms will not deceive him, but he will look at the condition of the soul for each one and speak with him. There are many animals in the world which are in human form. When he identifies with them, to the swine he will throw acorns, to the cattle he will throw barley and chaff and grass, to the dogs he will throw bones, and to the slaves he will give only elementary lessons. To the children he will give the complete instruction. From there, the author moves to comparing gnosis to sexual intercourse. No one can know when the husband and the wife have intercourse with one another except the two of them. If there is a hidden quality to the marriage of defilement, how much more is the undefiled marriage a true mystery? It is not fleshly but pure. It belongs not to desire but to the will. sex, hidden sex, and all this talk about the will? Woo! If following passages and writers suggest that only a deserving person may enter the bridal chamber, lesser humanity yearn just to hear the bride's voice and to enjoy her ointment, and let them feed on the crumbs that fall from the table like the dogs. The passage suggests two things. One, that the Gospel of Philip's author probably represented aesthetic Gnosticism. He's painting a pretty bad picture in all this sexuality. I agree with that, for sure. Back to the book. With his reference to the marriage of defilement, it's hard to imagine using such language and then turning around and carrying out a sacramental sexual ritual. I don't know. Like, if you listen to the cold open, they're talking about, like, coming in each other's hands and, like, menstrual bleeding in each other's hands. I mean, that seems pretty gross, too. In the other insight, however... The other insight, however, is that Gnosticism permitted differing, even opposing interpretations, the teachings based on the principle of giving an individual what was appropriate or his level of spiritual discernment. Therefore, we cannot entirely shut the door on the little sacrament of sexuality. If not in this particular instance, then elsewhere during Gnosticism's varied history. Further support for a metaphorical reading of the Gnostic or the Gospel of Philip's bridal chamber passage comes when the writer suggests that only through this ritual can one escape the power of evil spirits, and one shall be able to escape them, since they detain him if he does not receive a male power or a female power in the bridegroom and the bride. One receives them from a mirrored bridal chamber. And this bridal chamber, the author adds, is not for the animals, nor for the slaves, nor for the defiled women, but it is for free men and virgins. Finally, the bridal chamber is mentioned in connection with Christ's incarnation, in which most Gnostic literature is seen as a daring foray into the kingdom of the demiurge, in order to bring the true knowledge to that minority capable of comprehending it. Indeed, one must utter a mystery, he writes, the Father of everything, united with the Virgin who came down, Sophia Barbelos, rather than Mary. In this instance, and a fire shone for him on this day. He appeared in the great bridal chamber, therefore his body came unto being on that day, and it left the bridal chamber as one who came into the being from the bridegroom and the bride. So Jesus established everything through these, the metaphorical terms. Then the bridal chamber ritual, throwing my phone across the room, where am I at? United the initiate with his or her image or angelic counterpart. Fucking angels. In an image to describe in sexual terms, but not literally. So, in other terms, this union may be viewed as a marriage between psyche or mental, emotional, and the undying spirit. This initiation to the text proclaims that Gnostics became no longer Christian, but a Christ. Such sexual metaphors were not entirely absent from the Catholic Christianity. Paul, who valued virginity over marriage, goes on to say, in the well-known "Husbands, love your wives" passage of Ephesians chapter 5, that it interprets the scriptural passage about the two becoming one flesh as referring to Christ and the church. Of course. Of course he does. And human nature being what it was, the charlatans undoubtedly flourished, using the language of religion in order to satisfy their own desires. Of Ephesianus believed that it was denouncing such charlatans when he described men making fools of poor women and saying, "Have sex with me so that I may present you to the Archon." With each act of sex, the Gnostics name the outlandish name of one of those invented by them and pray, "I make an offering to you, so and so, and that you may offer to so and so." When he has reached the number of 365 lapses, that is of a shameful act, and the names invented by them, from then on he dare say, "I am Christ, for I have come down from above by means of the names of the 365 archons." For their part, the bishops from the late 1st and 2nd centuries viewed these superior Gnostic Christians with a great deal of suspicion. They respected some Gnostics from their self-discipline and asceticism, but the Gnostics' constant creation of new personal knowledge and new holy books was a greater threat. Ultimately, Orthodox Christians used the Gnostic threat to their beliefs to define precisely what those beliefs were, an endeavor central to the 2nd century Christian theology. The struggle over the key beliefs of Christianity was to produce the whole concept of heresy as evil, something entirely foreign to the pagan world. That was from the Encyclopedia of Heresies and Heretics by Chaz A. Clifford. Amazon should pay me. I am John Towers. This has been the Abercast, the new format, episode 91. Trying to figure out what to do here. What to do? I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one, and then we're going to end. I'm going to do these two, and then we're going to end. Hey, oh, oh.